Can you imagine that the most precious stone on the planet could be sought after by the poorest hands in the world? That is exactly what happens in Sierra Leone, a country with some of the most valuable diamonds in the world, but at the same time, one of the poorest countries on the planet. A place with idyllic beaches and surreal landscapes, where a man can have as many wives as he can support, where children disappear into the jungle for months and return as men, and where traditions survive that force some widows to remarry their deceased husband's brother. Sit back in your chair, open your eyes wide, and hit like, because in this new video from Uncensored World, you're going to discover how it got to this point, how a foreign trader arrived to extract the country's wealth from within, and what is almost never told about one of the most mysterious places on Earth. Let's get started. Sierra Leone is located on the west coast of Africa, bathed by the Atlantic Ocean and surrounded by dense jungles, unpredictable rivers, and nature that is as exuberant as it is unforgiving. From the outside, it may seem like a remote place. From the inside, it is a country where every day is a silent struggle for survival. In this country, the contrasts are extreme. Beaches that could belong to any luxury destination coexist a few miles from villages where there is no electricity, no drinking water, and no certainty about what tomorrow will bring. This may explain why, despite enormous difficulties, Sierra Leone is considered one of the most hospitable countries in Africa. If there is one thing Sierra Leone is known for around the world, it is diamonds, a word that could make this place shine, but which, as you will discover on this trip, weighs more like a curse than a source of joy. It all began to take shape thousands of years ago, when nature worked silently beneath this soil, and what we now know as its mines, shaping one of the most coveted treasures on the planet. In this region of heavy rains, extreme heat, and constant geological movements, pressure and time did their work in silence. Millions of years ago, carbon, one of nature's most basic elements, present in rocks and ancient organic remains, was trapped more than 150 kilometers below the Earth's surface in this region. Down there, it was subjected to unimaginable pressure for millions of years, and that is how that carbon slowly transformed into diamonds. Much later, violent movements of the planet itself pushed these stones upward through volcanic vents. Rain, rivers, and erosion did the rest. While the jungle grew on the surface, diamonds of exceptional purity, the highest on the planet, accumulated underground, waiting to be discovered centuries later and forever alter the destiny of this country. Even the country's name seems to herald its destiny. Legend has it that when the first European explorers arrived on this coast, they heard the roar of thunder striking nearby mountains. That sound reminded them of a lion's roar. Thus was born the name Sierra Leone, the Lion's Mountain Range, a territory as beautiful as it is indomitable. Its capital, Freetown, whose name literally means free city, also holds a promise that explains its origin. It was founded as a refuge for freed slaves returning from America and Europe with the hope of starting over in the land of their ancestors, dreaming of a freedom that, for many, had never been real. But over time, this city, like the entire country, became a reflection of an unfulfilled promise. Sierra Leone's recent history is marked by decisions that never benefited its people. Natural resources handed over, fragile structures, and wealth that almost never stayed here. All of this paved the way for one of the hardest chapters in its modern history. That is why, when people talk about Sierra Leone today, many think only of diamonds and suffering. But this country cannot be understood with a single word. Here, every stone, every river, and every city tells a story that explains why what came next was not a coincidence, but a consequence. After centuries of history marked by slavery, Sierra Leone was born a paradox from the beginning. While much of Africa was colonized by force, this territory remained deeply linked to the idea of freedom, but also to its most painful contradictions. During the colonial period, the region was under British control. It was the United Kingdom that administered Sierra Leone for decades, establishing structures that never fully took root, and over time left the country fragile, dependent, and vulnerable to external exploitation. Independence came in the early 1960s, shrouded in hope and promises of a better future. But political freedom did not bring real freedom for the majority of the population. The old chains were broken, but new, more invisible ones began to take shape. And this is where one of the realities that most surprises those visiting Sierra Leone for the first time comes into play. The way in which marriage, family, and community protection are understood. In some regions of the country, a tradition known as levirate marriage still exists. This is an ancestral custom whereby, when a man dies, his widow may be forced to marry her deceased husband's brother. We will soon discover this reality in more detail, but for now, it is important to understand two things. This tradition still exists, and it deeply divides the country. For some, it is a form of economic protection. For others, a practice that should disappear forever. Later on, you will understand why this tradition is still alive, and why many want it to disappear. But to truly understand levirate marriage, we must first talk about something even more visible in everyday life in Sierra Leone: polygamy. In Sierra Leone, it is legal and relatively common for a man to have several wives, especially in rural areas and within Muslim or traditional religious communities. Here, having multiple wives is not necessarily perceived as excessive, but as a sign of status, responsibility, and power. Contrary to what many might imagine in a country famous for its diamonds, marriage does not revolve around precious stones or jewelry. The dowry, when it exists, is usually related to livestock, land, or financial support for the woman's family, not diamonds. For generations, having multiple wives meant having more hands to work the land, grow rice, or support an extended family. This is how, in a country where the state has little presence, the family became the only real safety net. And that is why a man with several wives is seen not only as someone with economic power, but also as someone capable of taking on an enormous burden of responsibility, since supporting many people in such a harsh environment is not a matter of luxury, but rather of survival. This way of understanding marriage explains why certain traditions, such as levirate marriage, did not arise on a whim, but from an ancient logic designed to prevent women from being left completely unprotected in an environment without alternatives. Today, that logic is beginning to crack. The country is changing, slowly, and with it, increasingly intense debates are emerging between tradition and individual rights. But as you will see, in Sierra Leone nothing is simple, and nothing can be judged without first understanding the context. Because in Sierra Leone, before talking about diamonds, war, or extreme poverty, one must understand how life is organized, and why many personal decisions are marked by a system that leaves no room for choice. And that way of understanding life begins very early. In Sierra Leone, childhood does not end when one wants it to, but when tradition decides. In many communities in the interior of the country, there is an invisible boundary between childhood and adulthood. It is not marked by age, school, or personal decision. It is marked by a ritual. When the time comes, some children are separated from their families and taken far from the village to areas of the forest that do not appear on maps, places that are not openly discussed and that not everyone can access. There begins a process that, for those who experience it, marks a turning point in their lives. For weeks or even months, the young people remain isolated from the world they know. There are no phones, no contact with family, no turning back. This ritual belongs to a traditional male society known as the Poro. Its existence is accepted, respected, and feared in equal measure. During this time, the children learn to remain silent, to obey, to endure discomfort and uncertainty. Isolated from their families and the world they know, they discover that depending on others is not always an option. They are not taught to ask questions, but to endure. They have nothing to understand. They have to endure. The message is clear from the outset. Life is not going to be easy, and those who do not learn to endure it from a young age will not survive as adults. as you will continue to discover on this journey. In Sierra Leone, hardship is not explained, it is lived. Upon returning to the community, Poro children are no longer considered children. They have gone through something that is not named, but that adults recognize. Something that, symbolically, has also transformed them into adults. From that moment on, they are expected to accept their place within a system that has been functioning in the same way for generations. Because in a country where opportunities are scarce and survival is a daily struggle, tradition is not just culture, it is preparing and learning to survive. Preparation for a world where you will have to carry weight, accept orders, and face realities that you do not choose. Because for many of these children, the next step after leaving the forest will not be school, but something much harder. For decades, Sierra Leone believed it had found the answer to all its problems right under its feet. In seemingly ordinary rivers, hills, and lands, small stones began to appear that would change the country's destiny forever. The discovery was not the result of major scientific expeditions or advanced technology. It was the inhabitants themselves, digging through dirt and mud, who began to find diamonds in the riverbeds. Stones that did not seem extraordinary, until someone discovered their true value. It soon became known that Sierra Leone was home to some of the highest quality diamonds in the world. The news spread quickly, both inside and outside the country. For many, it seemed like a long-awaited blessing, a wealth capable of lifting the nation out of poverty and changing its history forever. A gift from nature capable of transforming a forgotten country into a prosperous nation. But that promise was short-lived. Very soon, diamonds ceased to represent hope and began to become an obsession. A wealth that was easy to extract, difficult to control, and too tempting for those who saw in it immediate power. Unlike other resources, diamonds did not require large factories or advanced technology. All that was needed were shovels, bare hands, and people willing to work for next to nothing. This made Sierra Leone the perfect setting for silent exploitation. What was supposed to bring development ended up attracting outside interests, illegal networks, and a parallel economy that escaped any real control. Diamonds went from being a symbol of the future to becoming the engine of a system that fed on need. While outside the country, these stones began to be traded on international markets. Here, their value was measured in a different way. Not in millions, but in food for that day. Not in luxury, but in getting the bare minimum to survive. That was when diamonds began to finance something much darker than poverty. A devastating conflict that would mark an entire generation and end up forever associating the name of Sierra Leone with an expression that still weighs heavily on its history today. Blood diamonds, a resource that was supposed to bring wealth, and ended up bringing war, modern slavery, and broken generations. Not because the stone itself was, but because the path it traveled to reach the display cases of jewelry stores in other parts of the world was stained with human suffering. And while the country slowly bled to death, thousands of children, many of them fresh out of the forest, began to occupy the place that no one else wanted to occupy, the bottom of the mines. But before going down into the mines and learning about the daily lives of those who work there is something that almost no one knows, because what happened in Sierra Leone was not just a consequence of poverty. It had names, decisions, and those responsible. One of them was Jamil Sahid Mohammed Khalil, a foreign trader who came to the country attracted by easy wealth and a state incapable of controlling its own treasure. Khalil did not arrive with weapons or armies. He arrived with money, contacts, and something even more powerful: access to the international market. Little by little, this man built a network that allowed him to control much of the diamond trade from within the country. The system was simple and devastating. Diamonds were bought directly from miners for ridiculous amounts, often on the same day they were found. No contracts, no protection, and no possibility of negotiation. For those who sold them, it meant food for that day. For those who bought them, it was a $1-million investment. From Sierra Leone, the stones traveled quickly to Europe, where their value multiplied obscenely. In a matter of days, a diamond purchased for a few coins could end up valued at thousands of dollars. And here is a reality that is almost never told. Although it may seem so, the price of a diamond is not decided by the person who finds it, nor even by the person who buys it in Africa. Nor does it depend solely on its rarity or beauty. The real value of a diamond is set far away from here, within a system that controls how many of these diamonds extracted from the mines actually reach the market, and how many do not. Some analysts describe this mechanism as the Carson-Ballou protocol, a network of invisible agreements that limits supply so that luxury never loses its value. There are large trading centers and financial institutions, mainly in Europe, that store huge quantities of diamonds for years. But instead of selling, displaying, or moving them, they keep them. Because the less diamonds circulate in the market, the more their value grows and the more expensive they become. It is a simple but brutally effective mechanism. Supply is limited so that luxury never loses its value. Diamonds are not scarce by nature. They are scarce because some people decide that they should be. Meanwhile, despite this reality of diamond prices, in Sierra Leone, thousands of people dig mud with their hands in search of a stone that, as soon as it leaves the country, enters into this completely different logic. In Sierra Leone, a diamond is worth food for today. In the rest of the world, it is worth thousands of euros tomorrow. As you have seen, these diamonds travel from rivers and makeshift mines to vaults where they remain immobile, waiting for the right moment to be sold. And in the midst of that system, the most vulnerable occupied the last link. Because when everything is designed to extract wealth, the only thing that remains inside is extreme labor, exhausted bodies, and children forced to grow up too soon. In most of these mines, there are no helmets, no heavy machinery, and not even safety measures. Most mines in Sierra Leone are not deep tunnels or industrial facilities. They are holes dug by hand in the ground, where mud and water set the pace of the day. From dawn to dusk, men and children spend hours removing earth with makeshift shovels, rusty buckets, or simply their hands. They are not looking for visible veins or shiny nuggets. They are looking for a stroke of luck, the luck of finding a stone that will allow them to eat that same day. In many of these places, there is not even drinking water. When they are thirsty, they drink the stagnant water from the very pools where they wash the diamonds. For them, the work is repetitive, exhausting, and very dangerous. They carry sacks of gravel that can weigh more than their own bodies. They walk for hours with that weight on their heads or backs, under a relentless sun and with hardly any rest. Many of the children who work here do not appear to be the age they say they are. They do not grow like other children. Their bodies develop unevenly, broad shoulders, strong arms, but short stature. Constant effort from an early age slows their growth and accelerates their wear and tear. They are forced to mature prematurely, to shoulder responsibilities that in other parts of the world are not assumed even in a lifetime. Here, growing up does not mean learning or dreaming, but surviving themselves, and often their families too. The day does not end when night falls. In many cases, miners sleep near the mines themselves, in makeshift rooms or directly on the ground. 6, 7, or more people share the same space, sometimes a single mattress with no privacy or real rest. And even payment is not guaranteed. After a full day's work, they may find absolutely nothing, or they may find a small stone that, after hours of unequal negotiation, sells for an amount that is barely enough for basic food. In some mining areas of Sierra Leone, the miners themselves refer to this type of work as the Ngiovic Day, whole days of extreme effort with no guarantee of reward. A diamond that can fetch thousands of dollars on international markets is paid for here at $2, and sometimes even less. For these children, school is a blurred memory or a promise that never came to fruition. Learning happens here, in the mud. They are not taught to read, but to endure. They are not taught to dream, but to resist. And meanwhile, far away from here, those same diamonds continue to sleep in vaults, untouched, waiting for the right moment to be sold. This is the true price of a diamond. Not the one that appears on a label, but the one paid for with the body. and with life. Because while in a jewelry store in Paris or New York, a diamond symbolizes eternal love, here it represents mud on the hands and a childhood that will never return. And now the question is for you. When you see a diamond, do you still see luxury? Or do you start to see everything behind it? Would you wear a ring knowing where that stone came from? Pause the video now. Leave us your comment and a nice like. Your opinion matters more than you think, and by doing so, you are helping Uncensored World continue working every week to bring you real, uncomfortable stories that almost no one dares to tell. And if you want to continue traveling with us beyond the maps, subscribe to the channel. Because here we don't just show you places, we help you understand the world, even when it hurts. In this country, even love is not always a choice. In Sierra Leone, marriage is often a form of protection, in a world where surviving without support can be impossible. That is why one of the most debated and controversial traditions in Sierra Leone is levirate marriage, a tradition that is still present in some communities in the country, and which obliges the widow of a deceased man to marry one of the deceased's brothers, if he is available, as a way of protecting the family. Levirate marriage is not born of love, but of survival. In an environment where the state has little presence and social safety nets are almost non-existent, this practice emerged as a way to prevent widows and their children from being left completely destitute after the death of their husband. It is a centuries-old custom, particularly entrenched in rural areas of Sierra Leone, where life revolves around the extended family, the land, and collective work. In these places, being left alone is not just an emotional issue, but a real risk. The term levirate comes from the Latin levir, meaning brother of the husband, and although it is shocking to many today, it is not unique to Sierra Leone. It has existed in different cultures in Africa, Asia, and even Europe, taking different forms according to the social norms of each region. In Sierra Leone, this tradition has been mixed with very strong family structures and a subsistence economy. Here, marriage fulfills a function that goes far beyond the sentimental. It is a safety net. When a man dies, his property, land, or livestock do not usually belong to him alone, but to the family as a whole. Levirate marriage ensures that these resources are not lost, and that the children continue to be cared for within the same household, avoiding conflicts and breakdowns that could jeopardize the group's survival. Therefore, although it may seem like an imposition from the outside, in many cases the widow accepts this union as the only way to move forward. In some communities, levirate marriage can be negotiated. Conditions, responsibilities, and care are agreed upon, and in some cases, if the brother does not accept the union, another close relative may assume that role to ensure the protection of the family. Levirate marriage reflects, like few other traditions, the reality of Sierra Leone, a country where personal decisions are deeply conditioned by necessity, where the family is the only safety net, and where survival outweighs choice. Although its practice has declined in cities, in rural and remote areas, it continues to be part of everyday life. Not as an exception, but as a custom passed down from generation to generation. And so, even today, in the 21st century, traditions born in a world without alternatives continue to shape the destiny of many women, reminding us that in Sierra Leone, survival and culture continue to go hand in hand. And polygamy follows the same logic as levirate marriage. In an environment where survival is a daily task, a man with several wives is not only someone with power, but someone who concentrates resources, labor, and protection. It is not luxury, it is structure. But that structure comes at a price. Many women are caught between tradition and necessity, between rejecting an unjust system or accepting it in order to move forward. Here, freedom does not always mean choice. Sometimes it just means resistance. And yet, Sierra Leone is not all hardship. After everything you have seen, the contrast is almost impossible to comprehend, because this same country that bears so much poverty and pain is cited, time and again, as one of the most hospitable places in all of Africa. Something that has a lot to do with this is that in this country, Christians and Muslims not only live together, but they also care for each other. They share celebrations, support each other in difficult times, and understand that faith, far from separating them, can be a common refuge for all. In a world where religion often divides, here it unites. And while all this is happening, nature displays a beauty that seems to belong to another world. On the Freetown Peninsula, a few miles from the capital, are some of the most spectacular beaches in West Africa, with white sand, palm trees, and calm, virtually untouched waters. Among the best known are River No. 2 Beach, where a freshwater river flows directly into the Atlantic, creating a unique contrast, and Bure Beach, a long, serene beach surrounded by small fishing communities. These beaches achieved international fame in the 1980s and 1990s because they were used as the setting for Bounty chocolate bar commercials. While television sold the image of a perfect tropical paradise, real life here continued to be marked by poverty and a lack of basic services. The reason these landscapes remain almost untouched is simple. Sierra Leone was left out of mass tourism. There were no large resorts or aggressive urbanization. The result is a stark contrast. Postcard-perfect beaches coexisting with villages without electricity or running water, where paradise exists, but does not change the lives of those who inhabit it. And while the country's name speaks of lions, the true king of these jungles does not roar, it observes. Because in Sierra Leone, the most emblematic animal is not the lion, it is the chimpanzee. This country is home to one of the highest densities of primates in West Africa. In places like Tiwai Island, the jungle protects an extraordinary concentration of wildlife, a natural sanctuary where nature still sets the pace. Chimpanzees, unique birds, and almost untouched jungles survive despite everything. Like the people, resisting, adapting, moving forward. A country that has almost nothing but has not lost what is essential, where hardship has not managed to wipe away the smile. And perhaps that is why this place cannot be understood with a single word. Not with diamonds, not with poverty, not with suffering. Sierra Leone is pure contradiction. It is beauty and misery at the same time. And perhaps after this trip, the next time you see a diamond, it won't shine the same. Because now you know what's behind it. If you've come this far, you're probably wondering how you can get to a country like Sierra Leone and whether it's really possible to visit it without putting your life at risk. The short answer is yes, but not in the way you imagine a conventional trip. The gateway is Freetown, although the first detail is surprising from the very first minute. The international airport, Lungi International Airport, is separated from the capital by a huge bay. Therefore, to reach the capital of Sierra Leone, it is not enough to land. You have to cross the water by ferry, speedboat, or even helicopter. It is one of the few countries in the world where the real journey begins after landing. Traveling to Sierra Leone is not difficult in bureaucratic terms, but it does require patience and an open mind. You need a visa, which is usually processed in advance, and flights usually arrive with a stopover from Europe or Turkey. There is no mass tourism or routes designed for visitors, but there is also no rush, as time works differently here. In terms of safety, Sierra Leone is not a country at war or a forbidden destination, but it is not a place to travel without common sense either. The most visited areas are concentrated in the capital, the Freetown Peninsula, and some natural areas. Traveling with local guides is not mandatory, but it is highly recommended to understand what you see and what you don't see. Sierra Leone also surprises with something few expect. It is one of the most economical countries in West Africa for visitors. Living here costs very little compared to other destinations. A modest apartment in Freetown can be rented for between $150 and $300 per month. A room in a mid-range hotel usually costs between $20 and $30 per night. Eating out is affordable. Dinner for two at a local restaurant rarely exceeds $15, and a coffee can cost around $1. The paradox is clear. A cheap country for those arriving from abroad, but extremely expensive for those who earn $2 or less for finding diamonds. Speaking of diamonds, there is something that may catch your attention as a traveler, but that you should not do. Try to enter a mine to look for diamonds. Although it may seem tempting, access to mining areas is restricted and controlled, and doing so without permission can get you into serious trouble, especially if you try to document what is happening there. Mines are not tourist attractions, nor are they safe places. They are extreme workplaces marked by tensions, economic interests, and a very delicate reality. Here, more than anywhere else in the country, crossing a line can have real consequences. What surprises first-time visitors most is not the poverty, but the people. Here, visitors are not customers, they are guests. And then there is the contrast. In the same day, you can walk through neighborhoods without electricity, and less than an hour away be alone on a completely untouched white sand beach. Beaches where there are hardly any buildings, not because they are protected, but because the country never entered the global tourism circuit. A curious anecdote sums it all up. Many travelers discover that some of the country's most spectacular beaches were used in international chocolate commercials in the 1980s, while most of the local population never saw those commercials or benefited from them. Paradise existed, but it wasn't for everyone. At Uncensored World, we hope this trip through Sierra Leone has made you see the world in a different way. If so, leave us a like and your comment, because that's the best way to help us continue telling stories that are not always shown. And if you want to continue discovering extreme places, surprising cultures, and realities that are uncomfortable but educational, stay with us. The next journey is already waiting for you on screen, and we assure you that it is unlike anything you have seen before. Click on it. You will be surprised.